Welcome to this Science Gallery Melbourne online event where we ask, could an insect, human and android communicate through dance? My name is Alicia Sometimes and it's so lovely to be in your company. Today we're going to hear from choreographer Prue Lang Mathieu Briand and evolutionary ecologist Professor Mark Elgar as they discuss their personal and creative journey with phasmids, those wonderful and intriguing stick insects. Before we begin, I'd like to say that Science Gallery Melbourne celebrates and acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we work, the Boonwurrung, Wurundjeri, Dja Dja Wurrung peoples and the Yorta Yorta Nation. Science Gallery Melbourne pays respects to all elders past and present and acknowledges First Nations people as the first artists and scientists around Australia. Body Insect Machine is a movement experiment between Prue Lang's choreography, artist Mathieu Briand's androids and a phasmid. Together they comprise a movement experiment informed by evolutionary ecologist Professor Mark Elgar. This work explores the body, androids, artificial movement on one side and the human body instinct, natural movement on the other, exploring distinctions between physical presence versus artificial presence. So let me introduce the speakers today. Prue Lang is an independent choreographer presenting her work in international festivals, theatres and museums throughout the world, including Theatre National de Chaillot, Paris, many spectacular festivals and spaces in France and Germany, and others such as the London Festival of Architecture, Tate Modern London, Adelaide International Arts Festival, Chunky Move Australia, and much more. Mathieu Briand is a Melbourne-based artist born in Marseille, France. Mathieu has participated in international group and solo exhibitions in major museums such as Centre Pompidou, Paris, Tate Modern London, Jumex Foundation, Mexico City, Walker Art Centre, Minneapolis, Sharjah Art Foundation, Sharjah, and others in Tokyo, Taipei, Santa Fe, Barcelona, and many more. Professor Mark Elgar is an evolutionary biologist at the University of Melbourne and has published numerous scientific articles on the mating and social behaviour of insects and spiders, including the role of pheromones in courtship. His research focuses on conflict and cooperation in animal mating and social behaviour and the role of chemical signals and diversity of receptor organs in animal communication. Mark is Field Chief Editor of Frontiers in Ecology and Evolution and Chief Section Editor of Social Evolution. Welcome to all my distinguished guests. I hope you're well today.
Thank you, yes.
Very good.
Great to see you. And we began by asking, could an insect, human and android communicate through dance? So I'll start with you, Dr. Mark Elgar. What exactly is a phasmid and how does it move? And were you surprised by artists who wanted to use these insects as inspiration?
So phasmids are a group of insects characterized by having tremendously impressive resemblance to the background. So they would include the sort of long stick insect types and more beautiful, well, equally beautiful leaf insects that look for all the world like a leaf, and they're found all around the world. They're endemic mostly to Southeast Asia, so that's where you go to if you really want to see really the most extraordinary diversity of different kinds of them. We've got lots of them here in Australia. They're vegetarian, vegan, so they only eat vegetable matter. And they have, in addition to their body plan, a few other tricks that is one of the reasons why we work with them. So females, for example, are able to reproduce without necessarily mating with males. So in fact, part of that male-female communication is a sort of very voluntary activity on the part of females. They're often also quite large insects. So I think the largest, I'm sorry, just get my hands correct. I think the largest ones that you can get in Australia are, over a foot long, the giant stick insects. They're really, truly, I think, magnificent creatures, really spectacular to look at. So So a great sort of model, I suppose, for an animal. But then they have these beautiful movements. They're very, some of their movements seem to be very studied, I think, as they move their legs forward. I think studied would be the right word. And then one of the ones that we work with will sway, and we think that that allows the insect to blend into the background. Because if you're a motionless insect against a moving background, then you start to become a little bit more conspicuous. Whereas if you are moving as the background is moving, then you're less conspicuous. And yeah, so movement's very important for these insects, and so it doesn't surprise me that that artists have used them, particularly in dance.
And Prue, what was your inspiration? Was it the beautiful movement? Because some of them seem like they're kind of awkward and clumsy as well. Was this the perfect entree into dance?
Yeah, I guess I wanted to speak about phasmid in relation to Android, because that was my particular interest, actually, was the phasmid has the moving, you know, like Mark said, it will move back and forth in order to camouflage itself. It's very careful in how it chooses which leg goes where, very complex. That's interesting for me. When it was on me, I was really at the service of this creature to try to guide, help navigate, and I was really getting in tune with it. So that's interesting for me in terms of physical presence, tuning into another live physical presence. And I think the other thing that was interesting was the android, which is obviously artificial presence, but also use the androids have this sort of very artificial fragmented movement where they're trying to kind of imitate human movement. And so my choreographic inspiration was the link between the two of them, actually. So on the one hand, using my own body to accompany the insect, but also looking at how the insect moves, and then looking at the androids, which are imitating my human body and trying to pick up on the idiosyncrasies there. And just moving between the two was really interesting for me.
And Mathieu, how did that come about for you? Did you find the organic movement interesting as well as the insect movement? How does the android come into it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, for me, the first organic movement is human. It's myself, I will say. Like, I think artists are like scientists, you know, we try to question the world and we look around us. And so to create android, it's not robots, you know, it's something that look like us, but we don't need to do something that look like us. So it's the first question, this transposition. And for me, I was very interested by stick insect exactly for the same reason, because the stick insect doesn't look like a stick to please himself, but to give us the perception that he is a stick. So I'm very interested about the fact that it's us who perceive what is it and not himself, you know? And so I was interested to question our own, how to say, a perception of us in our world today, you know? What this means to be human in our world today. We are so far away from nature, and we are going in a way where our human nature is disappearing. So I was interested to see how it was going for something like stick insect. We are so close with their habitat.
So true. And Prue, Science Gallery Melbourne lover asked, it certainly seemed the movements of the human were more intricate and delicate than the android. Was this to suggest that perhaps androids can never truly replicate or imitate human life and experience? Or did you find that quite different?
Yeah, I was picking up on this sort of idea of the intricacies and the textures. So the textures of my own body, which is hair, skin, elasticity, muscles, ligaments. I can move quickly, fragmented, soft. I can move with thickness. I can sort of weave around things in very complex ways in comparison to the android and also to the stick insect. And so I was sort of going in my own body a little bit more to really say, okay, what is my body in relationship to my habitat, which is, let's say, a dance studio for me, where I spend a lot of time and space. And so in a way, that's, that was a really nice contrast to, say, the android who gets a little bit stuck or limit in some areas. But then, the rotation goes way further, like the shoulder joint of the android can go way beyond my own. The way the stick insect can walk up the wall and walk upside down. And so it's just kind of interesting to sort of look at my own limitations, but my own sophisticated palette and sort of taxonomies of touch and texture. Yeah, so it was kind of a little play between the two.
I love that. And Mathieu, Prue's talking about texture there. Did you find a love of these phasmids with the android? Was there something that you noticed by studying them that you could do with your android, or was there any inspiration, or was it ever hindering?
Well, to be honest, the thing come and you never know why they are coming, but most of the time they are going at the good moment. I did some work around insects some time ago. It's because I'm in Australia that I've been interested by this stick insect. And it was just after doing this 3 years developing this android. So I think it's the reason I start to work with something very natural, but it's so complex, It's difficult, in fact, to have a relation with a stick insect, direct relation or reaction, And so I was interested with Prue to make a connection, with these three bodies, I will say. And articulation are really something that the three of them share, I will say. We are not looking to compare the quality of movement, because there is no reason for that, but how they can be complementary and how they can answer to us, because they don't answer together really. It's our perception, again, we make something together, and it's work also because it's a video and we are able to edit the thing, So we don't have to forget that it's through a video that this happened, and we manipulate by editing the video this perception, and this is very, very, very important. Like said Mark, when you put stick insect on a wall, you got sort of perceptions that you will not have if you have the stick insect in his habitat. So it's what we try to reveal with the dance and the video and the robots. It's this complex thing with invisible with the eye.
I really like your idea of the communication, actually, Mathieu, because in a sense, whilst you're manipulating the android in its regular life in its regular habitat, the stick insect is actually manipulating you in a communication way, because it's saying to you, I'm not me, I'm actually something else.
Yeah.
And so in that context, I hadn't really thought about it actually before coming here in terms of that communication, but there is a very real communication between the stick insect and humans, because they're eaten by humans. And I'm sure that indigenous Australians would have eaten the stick insects in Australia, they're, you know, a sizable meal if you can find them and if you can see them. But the stick insect is saying, I'm actually not a stick insect, I'm a stick. And most of the time, the viewers, including humans, are fooled.
And that goes to speak to transformation as well. And one of the things about this piece is, I guess, it is transformative. You start in one place and end in another, and dance and video can be some of the most transformative moments in art. Prue, was that your intention to take the viewer on a transformative journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of this idea of foreground or background, so we noticed, because we have a pet phasmid, stick insect, that when you blow on it, it sways. And that's the, you know, as Mark explained to us, the camouflage mechanism for when the trees are blowing. And so, yeah, I was really curious to sort of like, let's say, feature the stick insect, and we follow the stick insect's journey, so to speak. But then there's this, you know, there's this body, and then there's the android. And as Mathieu said, we're extracting these elements out of habitat. So, for example, we're putting the stick insect in a white background, which is not its habitat. But what I do a lot in the studio is I bring in a lot of ideas from nature into the studio. So I play a lot with a lot of different textures and ideas from nature through my body. So these kind of experiences, let's say when I'm walking in the bush or swimming or walking on the sand, they actually inform, they give me more embodied knowledge. And then when I come into the studio and explore, this embodied knowledge from nature often comes through into different choreographic explorations. And that's interesting for me. So, you know, it's a nice idea just to extract all these elements from their habitat to create a little story. And that does have a sort of transforming element to it. Because again, you saw the uncanny of the android. You don't see a head, but you can imagine the rest of the body. Perhaps with the, you know, I chose to not have my face in the screen, you know, to have these kind of fragments of bodies to create this little choreographic journey and story as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. And Mathieu, you mentioned the editing process before coming into play in an artistic sense, which is, you know, something you don't consciously think of as a viewer. I like the fact that then it becomes fluidity becomes part of the conversation. And I'm just so fascinated, the technical aspects of how does your android move? What goes into making an android?
Well, so they have been specially designed for me. And in fact, all the movement are choreography. There is no artificial intelligence. Well, I don't like this thing, artificial intelligence, because this doesn't mean anything, you know? So there is not a program running. So it's really me who designs the movement. And so after the machine execute the movement. So it's very simple. In fact, it's a very, very, very simple technology, you know, and it's what is always most complicated. Something with simple that you can trick. It trick you because there is some element that your brain say to you, oh, I recognize that. And it's what's doing the stick insect. Oh, I recognize that, but it's not exactly that, you know? And when you are in this space where your brain can't decide exactly if it's this or this, you're lost. And the android are working on this, what we call the Uncanny Valley. So it's this moment, and I imagined before it was with the sculpture, you know? If you imagine the ancient Greek, when they saw a sculpture perfectly executed, they were like astonished. Oh, is it a real body? What that, you know? And this moment brings us in a different step. And what's Prue doing, because she did also work with octopus, you know, she extend the mental practice to an octopus. This means that she asked her or the student to think like an octopus. But what this means to think like an octopus who don't have 2 arms and 2 legs, but something extra, you know? What bring us? And so the android was made like that. They look like they have body form, they have articulation, they have limitation, you know? But at the end, they are like a coffee machine. But if you hurt them, people will say, you can't do that. It's terrible, it's horrible. But it's just a coffee machine, you know? So I'm really interested around this idea, and it's for that the stick insect, I think are fantastic for that, you know, because they trick you all the time.
Well, it elicits empathy, doesn't it, like you say?
Yeah.
And when you're in the uncanny valley, you anthropomorphize it so much. You start to think that you are part of this creature's life, and that's what I love about the work that you both do. Mark, you, speaking of anthropomorphizing something, you have had pet insects in your life. Did you have a phasmid that escaped into the garden?
Well, we've kept phasmids from time to time, usually encouraged by enthusiastic children who then become a little less enthusiastic when they discover that actually they need to be cleaned out. Yes, I think I'm sure that we've had some that have escaped from time to time. I suspect they may well have become food for other animals, birds, quite quickly, particularly here in Melbourne, because it's cold, so they can't move very fast. But they do make they make fascinating pets, and the ones that they change shape too during their lifetime, which I think is what makes them endearing, perhaps for anybody young at heart. So many of them will look like ants when they just pop out of the egg, and that's actually something that's really remarkable to see. You see these this egg, which when the female when it pops out and it lands on the ground, and it's got chemicals on it that ants react as if it's something that needs to go into the nest. So they take it into the nest or into their nest, and it stays there. And then when it's ready to hatch, and we don't quite know what triggers that, if you're keeping them at home, they just need to be a bit moist and warm, and then they pop out, and this little stick insect comes out that at a distance looks like an ant. So again, it comes to this wonderful foolery that these insects are doing and messing with the minds of people looking at them. No, I'm not a stick insect, I'm an ant, and that probably means I can bite or sting, so stay away. And then I imagine that they race across ground up into a tree where they then start growing, and they're often very, very different from what they look like as an adult. So just seeing those changes is, I don't know, if you're interested in natural history and stuff, then it's fun.
Well, it's got a lot of complexity, and at the moment, especially in Melbourne in lockdown, we're used to going out to perhaps, a walk in the woods, the forest, the beach, the mountains, a country air, and I'm using my backyard at the moment to explore animals, snails, insects. I haven't found any stick insects. You're probably right, it's too cold.
No, it's too cold, yeah.
But that sense of adventure in even small things. Prue, you've said you've had or got a pet phasmid. And you work with a lot of animals, or with an octopus, or thinking in the mind of other beings. What's it like having something like that as a pet? Do you really bond with the insect?
I wouldn't say I really bonded with it, but it did bring a lot of joy. We also had the leaf insects, which my daughter and her friends would put on their tummies, and that was really kind of fascinating to sort of watch their fascination, how they explored their own body with this other body. That's one thing I think is really endearing about these these as pets. Yeah, I wouldn't say I would bond. They would camouflage sometimes when we go into the sort of, we've got like a giant aquarium full of leaves and they'd be hidden. So sometimes you couldn't find them. But yeah, they're quite fascinating, actually.
I love that idea.
Can I ask a question, Prue? When you were doing the sequence, were you aware of how firmly the insect was attaching itself to you? Was that something that you felt?
Yeah, I did. I felt that when it was on my skin. I was really trying to sense the pressure. I was also trying to predict and feel out which way it was going to go next, and I couldn't do that. So that's always fascinating for me, to not be able to do that, because you meant you immediately put your brain into this other. You're trying to understand how it's thinking and responding to different stimulus, and of course I was aware of the fact that they're very fragile, so I was just also being incredibly careful as I was manipulating it. But like you said, sometimes they're incredibly resilient. It survived a whole winter out on our balcony. Is that right, Mathieu?
Yeah.
So, quite resilient creatures, even though they're very delicate.
But they have little, well, some of them do anyway, almost little claw-like things on the end in there. So they're digging into you as it's walking up and down your arm, or is it actually hanging from underneath? I mean, I think it's fascinating that you were thinking about trying to anticipate their movement, because presumably as a dancer, that's actually what you do, isn't it? When you're engaging with, I'm on complete thin ice here.
When you partner something, you tend to get yourself into that really heightened awareness where you're really sort of sensing. And there was one point where it was on my hand, and I thought, of how many legs? 6. It wasn't the leg I expected each time. That's really fascinating for me as a choreographer. Oh, that's not okay. Interesting choice there, little girl.
And Mathieu, I'm wondering, this, movement in robotics and android movement has come, such a long way in such a short time. What's the future for you in this area? Is it an infinite possibility of how movement can be used?
Well, it's difficult to predict future at the moment.
Yeah.
But I will certainly continue to experiment, but it depends also what's happened around me, and what inspire me and what question me, because in fact I'm just question, and I like to question people with my work. But also it's a very difficult and long process production for the Android. It's not something very simple, and also the cost is pretty important. So it's also depend, grant and all this kind of thing.
Yeah, I can imagine. And Prue, does your previous work ever inform your future work? What are you thinking and magicking up at the moment?
Yeah, I really enjoy working with the androids, and I've already done a performance with 20 performers and Mathieu's androids, and that's something I'd like to continue. I'm quite fascinated by that relationship. And then I'm wanting to continue as well with this idea of parrots and bird camouflage and animal mimicry, and how that relates to social mimicry. So on the other hand, it's sort of really fascinated by, looking at really specific animal species and how they're evolving, especially parrots at the moment. That's my next kind of interest. So I'm very curious to go into that area and learn more about their sort of relationship to habitat, camouflage systems, behavior, and just to see how that could start to inform my choreographic thinking as well. Yeah.
Wonderful. And Mark, would you work with artists again? Is this something that you can see a lot of future in collaboration?
Yeah, no, one of the things actually that that I'm involved in is a thing called a bioinspiration hallmark research initiative. Sounds very fancy, and a lot of the focus of that has actually been using biologically inspired biology to inspire or inform design in all sorts of sort of I guess practical is probably the word to use. But I actually also really enjoy the notion of bio-inspired, if you like, in all sorts of other spaces, and particularly in the arts, which I have to say I'm a complete novice about, but I still think it's a wonderful way of being able to communicate. For me, outside of the box, it's very liberating to be able to explore ideas with people that come at it from a completely different perspective. And Prue's interests, I think, in the relationship, you know, between animal colorations and other things, I think, you know, is fascinating and kind of aligns a little bit with some of the things that I've noticed going to shows and things, is that actually the dancer can often disappear unintentionally because of the background. I remember going to a ballet, and there was this beautiful backdrop, but unfortunately half the corps de ballet disappeared when they moved into it because of the costumes that they were wearing. And I wasn't sure whether that was an intentional move or not, but so that whole notion of our perception and our capacity to see or not see things, or actually mostly it's smell or not smell things, and in most of the research I do, I think it's just fascinating. Putting it into an artistic space is great.
Well, Prue and Mathieu, you've definitely messed beautifully with our perception, and it is a wonderful work. So thank you so much for joining me today. So thanks to Prue Lang Mathieu Briand and Professor Mark Elgar, and a huge thanks to Chunky Move Australia and Ars Electronica. Body Insect Machine is available to watch now on the Ars Electronica website. Go do yourself a favour. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thanks, everybody.